All right, finally I get to talk to one of my brothers, YAAK. You've heard of him before. He worked on a track, I'm Back, with 506 and Jalen Santoy, and then also your Top Floor track that you've released recently as well, bro. This new track, I'm so glad that you're dropping it because I feel like it just like is so left field and left center of what YAAK is, that it's like this new world. Like, how does it feel for you that you've got this track out now and, you know, you've birthed a new baby?
First and foremost, thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure whenever we get to chop it up. So I appreciate you taking the time today. And
100, bro, always.
Thank you, man. Yeah, you put it so eloquently. It's definitely its own beast. I think, you know, in a way it kind of feels a bit like a spiritual successor to I'm Back, in that it's like grungy, it's like angry, it's in your face. For everyone who thought that like I snapped and did my thing on that, it's just like the next level. It's the next extension of that, you know? So it's equally exciting and nervous because, you know, whenever you drop a track with this much energy, like some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, but I think everyone has to respect it. So like, I'm excited.
When you do have so many different sounds like I believe you do, and I can't even imagine what it would be like just trolling through the beats and the stuff on your computer and what you find on there. Is it hard to get inspired to create a track that is so left center and left field? Because I really don't believe that you're, you know, modeling yourself off of anything that's out there right now.
Man, it's so sick to hear, you know, someone say that, especially someone who knows my process the way that you do. It's a bit of a balancing act, you know. Sometimes I say it's like you start from a blank canvas every time. And the difference between that and maybe like a painting or something like that is that the canvas has no boundaries. It's not defined by any edges. So it can be really intense to kind of rein in the scope of your work. I think for me, having Hilo up and running, which is, you know, my label now, and having been able to like launch jazz through that, it's kind of like I get to put on specific hats when I'm working for specific people, you know? And so that left of field, that real experimentation like happens through YAAK. And so I always know that's what I'm going for. And it makes it a little bit easier, you know?
Did you have this beat and production ready before you knew Z Lewis was going to be, you know, the artist on this track?
Yeah, finding the artist was a monumental challenge. I kind of had the beat done and it was super angry and it was just like in your face and super high energy. And I was saying to my manager, G, we're like, dude, who do we even get on this? Like, who's going to bring like the energy on this? And, you know, for me, you know, I kind of circle back to like 2012 to like 2014, like dubstep era. There was this whole wave of like grungy UK artists that would jump on beats with like Skrillex, like Foreign Beggars, and all that type of jam. And so G knew the guys over at RMF, the Real Music Family over here in Melbourne as well. And he put me on to Z. And the moment I heard him, I was like, that's the dude. 100%, that's the dude. And it was so organic from there. The moment he got involved in the process, like, he's a freak MC, man. He sent me across like some demos in the early process. He was like, yeah, man, like, I don't know. And I was like, that's just send it to Spotify. It's done. And wrap it up. Like, it's over. So yeah, I was super excited about, had no idea who we were going to work with originally because it was just such a demanding song.
Well, it's so crazy that you say that because, you know, I wanted to ask that question, but in my mind, I thought you were going to come back and say, nah, we sat in a room and we really made this, because Z floats on the production amazingly, and especially for that kind of a sound. And you mentioned that 2012 era because it really does remind me of like the Skrillex and Vic Mensa.
No Chill, 100%.
No Chill.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the No Chill, that kind of vibe. And it's tough to find a hip hop artist that can do that.
Dude, you know, I think one of Z's biggest strengths, and this is even hearing some of the stuff that he's kind of got locked away in the vault, you know, much the same way that you said about me in terms of like that versatility, he has that. And I think, to be honest, like, I'll be completely real with you, the song was in the process of being created for like a really long time. And, you know, it happened during lockdown, so it was hard for us to tee up. We had like a brief window of reprieve where we could get in the same room together. And once that happened, like, it was a wrap. Like, the moment we kind of had a couple of weekends in a row where we could jump into the studio, and once we kind of got that energy together in the room, it just came together so quickly. And I think you feel that. I think that's why, and it's in the wording when we release it. It's not YAAK feat Z. It's like YAAK and Z. It very much feels like I couldn't have done it without him, and vice versa. He was just the right person at the right time for the right track. So
what would you say, to try to jump outside of, your YAAK and who you are, what would you say it's like to be a YAAK fan, someone that loves your music? Because for me, when G sends me your music, I never know what I'm going to hit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's going to come out of the speakers when I press play. What do you think it feels like? They see you promoting this song, but they have no idea what they're about to get.
Yeah, look, that's something. First and foremost, you're welcome, and I'm sorry, like all at once. That's one of the reasons that I started the whole YAAK project after being like locked into a record deal that wasn't super advantageous to me previously. Was like artist first, creativity first, like experimentation first. Like it's all about the music. And I think for fans of mine, they've been incredibly patient. They're always so receptive, because they get so much. I think that's part of, the joy of it though. It's like getting a box of favorites, man. Every time you reach in, you're going to get something a little bit different, but there's kind of that sonic identity, like that YAAK sound that ties it all, together. And recently I've been working more and more with a lot of other artists as well outside of like specific YAAK releases. And I think ultimately as a fan of YAAK, if my brand is across something, I know that that I'm a humble guy, so please, like I say this within that lens, like you're going to get good music irrespective of genre. Like I'm only putting out stuff that I'm really proud of. And it may be genre fluid, but it's always stuff that I'm 100% behind. And so that's part of the journey, and I hope people enjoy that.
We had a really in-depth conversation, which is now probably 2 years ago, I want to say, which is kind of crazy to even, it's actually probably more than 2 years ago when I think about it. And it was about that genre fluidity and where you wanted to go with your sound and what you were going to do. Do you feel like you've really locked in and put your foot into what YAAK is now and you have a clear understanding of it? Or are you still discovering it?
That is such a good question. And probably one that I wouldn't have been able to answer even a year ago, to be honest. It's something that's constantly evolving, but I think when I look at YAAK and how I see it going, moving forward, I don't want to limit myself to any particular genre, any style of release, and that's why collaboration has been such a key part. And I think moving forward, when I think about how I want YAAK to kind of like crystallize in the future, it's kind of like, I want YAAK to be a powerhouse for production. Like I'll have my own releases and I'll always back them 100%. But if you're a pop artist, if you're a hip hop artist, if you're an electronic artist and you're like, man, I need somebody to bring something to this track, YAAK's your guy, And it gives me the ability to kind of dip into different lanes and genres as well. So it's kind of self-serving, but also I get to experience music with other people that I could never have created on my own. And I love that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, that the many hats that you do wear. You've released, you've launched a creative label, Hilo, with, your manager, G. Talk to me about the reasoning behind why you wanted to, I guess, make that official and what the, I want to say the essence of Hilo is for you and the crew.
Yeah. So, Hilo is something that G and I have kind of had going for, I want to say a couple of years now, at the very least. Like the concept was there and we were thinking about it, but weren't ready to like actualize it yet. And I think it's kind of linked into what I said before about me having previously been in a disadvantageous record deal. Hilo represents like the artist first, always. It's about creativity. It's about art and emotion. It's about always putting that first before everything. Kind of linked to your question before, the same way that every YAAK release is so weird and so different and like it ranges such a far, like that's because I feel like within the Hilo scope, I'm comfortable enough that I can do that. If Jazz turns around and goes, I want to release an acoustic album, we're going to be like, okay, interesting. But like, hey, it's your music, like, like whatever it is. And so it's really just about creating like a safe space for artists that we work with to create whatever they want. And so that's why it's so sick, like to see Wish You Well come out, which is obviously this power ballad. and then 10 merits right after it on the same label. Like there's no limit. And I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, you're talking about Jazz, which, we just got her first single. But, we look back 2019, she was on your Tides EP that you put out. She had 2 songs on there. Then she also was on the Drive single that you put out later on that year as well. There's a big chunk of time in between those, those pieces of music and then 2021. What's that been like for, you as, mentor and creative and working with her, and then, getting her to this position where she can drop this single and it come out and people go, wow.
Thank you, man. So kind. It's been terrifying and it's been satisfying. It's been just like crazy to watch her growth. From when she came on and was like featuring on my songs originally to seeing where she is now in terms of like when she steps into a room and being like, this is the vision that I'm going for. Like, this is the way it's going to play out. This is the type of sound that I want. It's been insane just to watch her get more and more comfortable with her creative process, and beyond getting more comfortable with her creative process, getting more comfortable with, it's hard to phrase, but like putting it out there, this is me as a person. This is my sound, and here it is. Like, that's such a hard thing, I think, for any artist to like really claim. And I've just watched her, become more and more comfortable in her own skin and her own sound over the past year. And it's reflected in her writing. Like, Wish You Well, bro. The first time I heard the demo, I like cried. I was like, oh my God, yeah. So powerful, And I'm excited because I think it's going to continue as she continues to work and continues to grow, like the demos that we're working on now as well. It's a constant process, and it's humbling as somebody who's been, doing this for a little bit longer. It keeps you excited and engaged because you're like, look at the hunger that she's going at this with, like it's contagious.
Why was this the right time? Because I remember when you guys told me about her when I first met you, and I may have heard a song, can't remember if it was a demo or what it was, but why was this the moment for her to finally release?
I think, and I don't want to speak too much on Jazz's behalf in terms of like how she felt about the process. Mm-hmm. But I'll say, like, from the label side, as her producer and like as her management and as her label, actually that's on G, the management side. I give him full credit for that, bro. Can't even manage myself in the morning. So we were kind of working on this EP at one point, and it's kind of related to the previous question in terms of her finding her sound and her sonic identity and all that. And we had a few really strong demos, but it just never felt like 100% right. And so, we had the conversation, and it was a tough conversation because we put so much time into this EP. We're like, let's just break it down, whatever expectations we have for it, throw them out the window. Let's not stress about this. Let's just start writing music and go from there, and consider that all to have been like a learning experience. And some of them are still vaulted because some of them are actually insane. Like, you're not going to just throw them away. But it was more of like a symbolic turning of a new page, And so Wish You Well was very much inspired by some experiences that she and some friends had gone through. And so when she wrote it, it was more cathartic than anything else. And so the moment we kind of got together in the room and created it, it was like, and I think Vince Staples spoke on this recently in regards to releasing music. And I thought it was like so poignant in terms of like, you can have something and sit on it, and then the moment just passes. And then it's just too late to ever drop it again. And it's not that it's a bad song. It's just that music moves so insanely quickly, and we move within it so quickly. And so for us, it was kind of like, no, this is a special moment, and we want people to hear this moment. And so it's not necessarily about this is the right time. It's just kind of like, make it the time. It's not about finding the perfect time. It's about taking the time and making it perfect. You know what I mean? Damn, that was such a lame quote. But like, we're just kind of like, there's not going to be a right time. Let's just do it now.
No, and I think that as an artist is almost, a moment usually that really starts to define them when they start to understand those kind of things, because everyone is usually waiting for the right time. People talk a lot about, it's the summer track, or, hey, I'm going to do this right before Christmas and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if the song speaks and it has a soul and it moves people, it will always move people. You know what I mean? It can't be defined by a period or a moment. It has to be defined by the quality of and the soul of the song, I believe.
I literally couldn't put that any better. 110%.
Yeah.
And so many people get caught into that trap. To be honest, we got caught in that trap with 10 Merits. That was such a talking point for G and I in terms of releasing 10 Merits because, you know, the whole country's in lockdown. The world was a weird place. We've got this absolute banger on our hands. And so we were like, when do we release it? Nah, it's too turn up. We can't release it, bro. Everyone's sad and at home. And then the next month would come by and we're like, when do we release it? We're like, nah, we can't release it. We can't release it. We can't release it. We can't release it. And then, you know, jumped in that room with Z and we finished it off when we had the chance. And we were like, dude, nah, I don't care about waiting for the right time to release this. Like, we're going to release this because, like, I want people to feel this energy while they're at home, while they're doing their thing. Or, you know, as, you know, fingers crossed, restrictions start to ease a little bit and we start to experience more again. It's kind of like, I don't think 10 Merits ever would have came out if we waited for the right time. There never would have been a right time to release it, you know?
What motivates you, you know, when you're struggling to find creativity or, you know, you feel like you have a million projects or hats that you have to wear? What motivates you to actually create?
That is such an intense question. That is a fantastic question. What motivates me? I think, you know, when I'm wearing a million hats and I've got a million processes going on, the thing that motivates me, honestly, is knowing that I'm going to get some reprieve from all of that when it's done. It's just kind of like, let's get it done. But for the most part, it's because, and I know that this sounds like a bit of a cliched answer, but I genuinely mean it. It's kind of like, if I ever take a break, I'm like, man, what am I doing with myself? Like, what am I like? Oh, I actually need to there's nothing that I would rather be doing. You know, like if I gave myself the opportunity to do anything else, I'd end up sitting down and making music. So I think in moments when I struggle with motivation, it's really important for me to tell myself, hey, there's no expectations behind this. Sit down and create because you love to create. And if something comes of it, that's sensational. And if nothing comes of it, you got to create today. Like, thankful for that because so many people aren't even in that opportunity. Like, don't get that up.
But it's real interesting though, because when I ask that question, I usually end up asking it twice. So I ask that question sometimes and I get, you know, a varied amount of answers. And then I always usually come back and I go, does the success motivate you? Does wanting to be on a stage and perform at festivals, does the money, does, you know, being, you know, on a movie, do those things motivate you as well?
I think, you know, I'm not some perfect spiritual being that I could be like, absolutely not. I create entirely for the art and only for the art. Like, I'd love to say that the answer is no. The truth is, you know, and I'm learning this every single day, and it's something that G and I grapple with Hilo as well, is that, you know, within the scene, and you know, because you've obviously got an artist and see how intense it can be, you have to be adaptable, you know? So without saying too much, because it's kind of like under wraps at the moment, I had a project that I was working on that I wanted released at the end of this year. That's been a long time coming. And then over the past couple months, obviously we released Jazz, and then Top Floor just kind of started going like wildfire. We know that we've got 10 Merits on the way. And so G and I had to have a hard conversation, you know, in terms of balancing creating with purpose and creating to like get on shows, creating to meet those targets or whatever. We were like, look, the momentum is there and we want to release this other thing, but it would be so silly not to back up Jazz's debut with something just as strong. It would be so silly not to close out the year with another strong YAAK release when everything's going the way that it is. So the reason that I say that all is to say it's not necessarily the main thing that drives our decisions. Because imagine like if you're like, I create what I create to end up on shows. GG, we've been in lockdown for 2 years. Like, you are going to be very unfulfilled. Yeah.
Your whole plan is fucked, right?
Like, you're going to be pretty upset. So I think you can't create for those reasons. But there's nothing wrong with turning around and like assessing your situation and being like, okay, let's make the smart decision. Because to your point earlier, like, good art is good art. And I think when you create with integrity and you make stuff that you're proud of, it doesn't have a shelf life. It's not like this is cool for the next 2 months. You know what I mean? And so I know that kind of counteracts what I said about the Jazz thing. I think you have to like move when it feels right. But yeah, you have to be adaptable. as well. So I think that definitely plays into the decision more than like money or being on a show or doing X, Y, Z. Because at the end of the day,
Well,
I
I could
want people to
definitely,
hear my shit. Like, so.
yeah. If no one hears the music, what's the point in making it in the long run? Because that's the reason behind it. You know, if you wanted to make bedroom, you know, your bedroom music and not release it and just listen to it yourself, then, you know, more power to you. But we're in the game, you know, you're in the
Exactly.
game to win, and you want as many people to hear the music that you release. So you have to make the right decisions to make that happen.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, bro, I'm glad that you are adaptable, because you know it does keep me on edge every time I get the emails and when the music comes out. But you know, there's 10 Merits tracks, like I said with Z Lewis. It really does stand by itself as something that I don't really see the scene doing, and I'm really excited to see what you and the High Low creative team and also, you know, Jazz do coming up to the end of the year, bro. And you know, like I always say, you've always got a place here on the DSP whenever you drop new music, bro.
Thank you, man. The love is so mutual. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing how people respond to it as well. Because I'm really proud of 10 Merits, man. I think it's going to do great.